So, good afternoon. So nice to see you all here. Now I'm going to work under an assumption that you're here to see the talk and you're not just left here over after lunch. If you're actually left over after lunch and you're trying to go see somebody else, this is your chance. Make a break for it. Okay, only a few. Doing pretty good. All right, so this is a session about leading knowledge workers. I am here to see you courtesy of the conference committee, Industrial Logic, and the Modern Agile community. And we will talk about some of those things a little bit. But mostly, I'm hoping to stir up a couple of ideas and receive some interesting ideas. We're going to have a gentleman running around in the aisles. I've promised to try to keep him busy. Collecting questions and ideas from you as we move forward. Limited interactivity, considering the shortness of time and the breadth of the topic, but we'll do the best we can. You are probably going to receive a very long reading list. What you decide to do with that is up to you. Some people are happy about that. So let's start off with a book. This is called Thinking for a Living. Living, because I'm from Illinois. Living. So now I'm articulate. After lunch, by Tom Davenport. It's some really interesting stuff. It's all about dealing with knowledge workers. It's about dealing with how they work and how that's different from normal people. And it's also about how to use tools and information to your advantage. I do recommend the book. It's not really recent, but a lot of the things I quote are not recent. So anything I give you is probably anywhere between 1925 and 1990 most of the time, because most of the things we know, we've known for a long time and just haven't acted on it. So we'll start with his. He said, knowledge workers primarily rely on their brains rather than their bodies in their jobs. So that's an interesting thought all by itself, isn't it? The industrial age started 300 years ago, and the industrial age is, they weren't the first time people worked, right? So people have been doing work forever. But in the industrial age, they decided to separate out the people doing the work from the people who do the thinking. And thinking was useful if it helped you do the work faster or better, but otherwise it was not that big of an advantage. Suddenly it became a whole role, and people worked with ideas. They created policies, systems, tools, processes, etc., etc. The beginning of the information age is considered to be 1974. Who here was alive? Good. Remember 1974? I have no idea what was the singularity that created a new age, the age of information. If you know what that is, I think it has something to do with personal computers, but I'm not entirely sure because that seems a little early. I got my first touch of a computer around 79. So if you find out what that is, if you guys have a computer handy, Google really quick, what was the cause of the change to the information age? So we've had a relatively short period of time on information versus a long period of time on motion as work. So this is a new management science as far as most of us are concerned, on a historic scale, right? So who does that? Well, let's see. Without knowledge workers, another quote from Davenport, there would be no new products and services and no growth. And we have watched the world turn from an economy that was primarily industrial, at least in the United States, where steel was king, to a situation where now the growing economies are data and entertainment, ideas. It's an interesting place to be. This is relatively new. This is exciting. We're at the point where earth and sea meet. This is the coolest place on earth. It's a dangerous place where crazy people live. Welcome, crazy people. So, one more quote from Tom Davenport. Well, for now. To make knowledge work productive will be the great management task of the century. And how we doing? Meh. Meh seems to be the correct answer. Okay, well, we have some ideas, and I'm going to anchor these back to these ideas of modern Agile, which is basically 4 simple concepts, 4 different values. At the top, you see make people awesome. So to be in this modern Agile mindset, we're thinking about how is it that we serve people better, other people. Well, what about customers? Oh yeah, customers. What about salespeople? Oh yeah, salespeople. What about managers? Yeah, managers too. And then what about developers? Yeah, well, what about testers? Why did you bring them up last? Why are they always at the end? Yes, make testers awesome, and DevOps and everybody else that's involved, right? At the bottom, we have making safety a prerequisite, and we've talked about how cognitive behavior, cognitive power somewhat relies on safety and the ability to ask questions. Skip to that. Two other things that you see going on across the middle. One of them is to experiment and learn rapidly, which I think is on this side, and then deliver value continuously, which is on this side. I'm not going to bring this up a lot. But these 4 values inform how we work with knowledge workers, which is, of course, all of you. Do you have paper? I didn't bring any cool collateral, so I don't have any like industrial logic notepads for you. But if you have a piece of paper and a pen, you're in the right room for it. You're all sitting at tables. A couple questions, so prepare yourself. You don't have to, if you have any shameful history, you don't have to out yourself, and I'm not making you commit to anything for the next 5 years or anything. Just think a little bit with me and think on paper. The first question is, why did you want your job? Some of you were promoted and you never really wanted it. But you know that management is inevitable as Node.js. There's nothing you can do about it. It's JavaScript, management, and death. I remember why I wanted my job. My job turned out to be way, way cooler than the reasons I had for wanting it, but that's okay. Let's do another question then. Put this down as number 2. When you're at work, what is it that shuts you down? You've been there where suddenly you just can't even. Okay. Now, I know that some of you could keep writing for the next 20 minutes, but I think we would be late in the process for that. So just take your first 3 or 5. So the next one is, when are you most engaged at work? When are you really at peace, at joy, creative stress, positive, powerful, curious? That's a shorter question, isn't it? Smaller answers. Okay. What do you need from others at work? So me personally, I wanted my job because I love learning and teaching. I'm a little bit of a maker, but I'm a much bigger teacher-learner. I'm curious about why things work and when they don't. What shuts me down is when I'm either entirely overwhelmed, there's just too much, and now I can't even choose. I don't know where to go. Or when I have had my ego slammed to the floor really hard. Or when I'm exhausted. Usually those are the things that shut me down. When am I most engaged? When I have an interesting problem and interesting people to work with. When I know that the outcome is something of value, that's going to be interesting and actually is going to help somebody. And what do I most need from others? I have absolutely zero sense of direction or time. So I need people to help manage my schedule and get me to the places I need to be. I am logistically a nightmare to deal with. I'm not nervous about it and angry about it. I just am not very capable when it comes to memorizing things with dates and dollars and lists and directions. So I need these things. Now, you've written down some things for yourselves. What I'd like you to do is take, I'll give you a couple minutes. if it's too personal, keep it to yourself. I don't want you to share anything personal. It's not that kind of a discussion. But at your table, come up with what are the things that you seem to have in common with the people you're sitting near. If you're all by yourself, this is a very simple task. Or you can move and make it more interesting. Okay? So just give you a couple minutes. Not 40 minutes. That would be way too many. So we'll give you just a couple minutes. Go ahead and discuss among yourselves. I'll tell you when to stop. Okay. I told you just a couple minutes. That was just a couple minutes. Mark, is it Mark? Yes, okay. We have another helper? Excellent. So if you guys want to split up, what I'd like to do is at your table, if you could elect a spokesperson who would like to tell us what you found that were like strong in common points. Tell me about your human commonalities. So quickly, someone from the table stand up. There's a go. Got a microphone coming? Somebody over here be thinking about it. Oh.
So for the first one, there was a lot of working with smart people, solving problems, working with engaging teams.
Excellent. Okay. Over here, what do you have in common? Somebody want to raise a hand and get a microphone? We got one up front, if you would come up quickly.
So what we found out was kind of like, we both think and believe that we are human being first. And we should appreciate the work of each other, and then we get very excited when we see creative and engaging people around us, and kind of like, not to make our problem others' problem. And that's what I think we both agreed. Anything else you would like to share? Attitudes can shut you down.
Attitudes can shut you down.
Absolutely.
That was
Thank
good.
you.
Nicely done. You had a nice small group too. Okay, so let's get Mark, somebody over here. When are you most engaged?
Anyone?
No commonality on what excites you about work? Or did you just not get that far? Did not get that far. Right. Let's not always have the same hands. Hey, listen, there's a table further back. So you guys know what your assignment is.
So the lack of excitement and the routine work shuts us down.
Okay, and now now switch back over here, because that's 2 shutdowns. So over here, when are you most engaged? We got a right up here, Adam?
We were both most engaged when we were problem solving.
Good one. Same over here? The most common thing I hear is when we get to take on a tough problem and work it to completion. It's the most common thing. I've never heard people say that they want to go to work and sit and watch cartoons all day, every day for a year. It's really strange that people have this opinion that tech workers are all lazy, but everybody wants to work. It's like otherwise they'd just stay home. Okay, so what do we most need from other people? Over here, anybody? At work.
Good work ethic.
So you need other people to have a good work ethic. That's good. I'm glad that you raised your hand. It was hard to see you in the back. Okay, and anybody over here? What do you most need other people to support you with?
I'd say communication, which I think many times lacks.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, now hold on to those thoughts. We're going to go to a couple different places, and these thoughts are going to have to come back up. So kind of evaluate how you need the workplace to be as we talk about some other ideas here. So we will begin, surprisingly enough, with curiosity, which we talked about a bit yesterday for an hour and a half without ceasing. Let me tell you a story. I was in a corporate classroom, and I was not the teacher. I was receiving training on how to give feedback. our instructor paced back and forth like I do and was teaching us all of these things about here's my observations, here's my ideas, blah, 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 blah. You know, you've had this class, right? Corporate training, most of you, how to give feedback. And one of the gentlemen sitting to my right had his, you recognize this device, anybody? The Apple Newton? Oh yeah, I hear that. I am in my tribe. Okay, so the gentleman had an Apple Newton and he was taking his notes. He was learning everything he could. The instructor walks by and says, shut that down, and walks past. Thought, why? So I sat and I thought about it, and I couldn't hear a word the instructor said for the next 40 minutes until the break. Because in my head, I was rehearsing a conversation. So I looked at my notes, and I walked up, and I said, pardon me, do you have a second? Can I speak to you alone? And the instructor said yes. And I said, okay. I noticed that, I observed that you walked over to this guy's desk, and you slammed the desk and told him to turn off his device. And the instructor said, yes, I did. And I said, okay. So I'm surprised that you did not ask any questions. Do you know what that device was? And the instructor said, well, it's a game or something, right? I said, no, that's an Apple Newton. It's a tablet computer. It's his note-taking device. He was listening and taking notes about your class. The instructor said, oh, I didn't know that. I thought, I'm learning this material better than the teacher is. I'm all proud of myself. I said, okay, well, what do you think you should do? The teacher said, I'll take care of it. And I said, thank you for your time. I don't have to be taught twice. I came back and sat at my desk. At the beginning of the next session, the teacher walked over to the desk. Hey, you can use that now, it's okay, and walked away. Really? Well, he was like, and then I was like, and the instructor was like, wow, that was not putting curiosity above judgment, was it? And then not apologizing because of the embarrassment and the shame. When you work with smart people, sometimes they're going to know things you don't know. And I think not asking seems like a big mistake. Do you see how curiosity is important if you're leading people who are intelligent and have their own knowledge and information? But we tend to see the world not as it is, but as we are. By the way, everybody's going to get mad at me, and they say, there's like 3 different sources for this. That was Covey. No, that was the Talmud. No, that was... So go to Wikipedia, look it up. The source is unknown. I'll have you know. I spent my time on that at 5 o'clock this morning. Do you ever wake up in the morning and suddenly realize how you have to rewrite your talk? Oh, that's a great feeling. But if you're going to stay curious, you've got to do it, right? Because otherwise your brain will say, oh, I'm going to come up with ideas, and he's going to throw them away. And it's just like any other employee at any other firm, right? If your ideas don't get attention, then you quit offering ideas. So you never shut down your curiosity by not listening to it. That would be a bad idea. But we all do it sometimes. Okay, so what that means, that quote was talking about the ladder of inference. And I've given you 3 names that you can use. In the notes, they'll be there. You can look up their material and understand what it's about. But basically, imagine that you've decided that bald men are liars. Okay. That's going to make this an interesting session. Okay, so you've decided that bald men are liars, so that is a belief you have. Now, if you look, there's a little curve here, and that belief cycles around to how you observe and filter reality. So when you see me say something to somebody, you're looking for the part of what I said that isn't entirely exactly perfectly true, because that's your filter now. You're looking to hear the lies from the bald men. Now, having filtered that out, you go, aha! Look, what he was saying wasn't really true. now my interpretation is different. And from that I can build my assumption. And that builds my perception that bald men are liars. And now the next bald man who speaks, I look for the flaw in what they're saying. That builds up and reinforces that chain of inference, that ladder of inference to the top, which shapes how I filter the world. Being sure is a pretty dangerous thing. And when you're kind of sure and you look for evidence that supports you, that's kind of a dangerous thing too. The ladder of inference can take us to many dark, ugly places. I know people who have long-standing prejudices that are unchallenged. There is no curiosity, and they're not open to being challenged on those topics. I know, right? And those prejudices don't happen to necessarily be about, accent or skin color or national origin or city origin. There's some people who can't stand people from Ohio. Can't imagine why. So, Christopher Avery, who you might have heard speak yesterday, had a suggestion. He said that false certainty is easy but crippling. Living in the question shows freedom and responsibility. Oh, curiosity. How I love it. So, maybe we should be inspectors. And maybe we should inspect not only those things that are new to us, but those things that are very old to us. And this was also a topic in the panel discussion. Who was in the panel discussion about curiosity? Bless you. And you came back. That's good. I think it was a good discussion. So, curiosity begins here. Gerry Weinberg said a problem is a difference between things as desired and things as perceived. What a brilliant definition. So I see 3 different ways to solve a problem, right? Do you see it? What are the 3 ways? Give me one. Change your desire. Correct the difference. Change your perception. At least 3 ways. Does anybody have a 4th? Turn on your heel and leave. Yeah, forget it. You heard it from a bald guy. There you go. Because you know. Okay, so, and that's what this is about, wherever the difference is. Actuals and expectations. My expectations are my perception of how it should be. My actuals are my perceptions of how they are. And that space between, that delta, is what we talk about as the curiosity space. That's where all the questions come from. That's all the good stuff. His quote came from a wonderful book. It's 115 pages long. It's a really tiny little book by Gerry Weinberg. And I don't know if Gauss was a writer or an illustrator. It doesn't matter. He's half of the book. And it's a really fun book. It's full of cartoons and challenges, and it helps you to understand what the problem really is, which opens you up to all kinds of new curiosity and questions. And it's a wonderful book. And if you don't own it, go to Lean Pub where you can get it at a discount. Because Gerry took all of his stuff and put it on Lean Pub just a couple years ago. Do get it. Read it about every 2 years. I love the picture I put on the bottom right. Has nothing to do with our topic, but what really is the essence of your problem. The other place to go looking is Carol Dweck, who is brilliant and has introduced the book Mindset and has done a lot of touring and talking. Everybody familiar with Dweck's work? Oh, you're the lucky 10,000. You guys are so lucky. I'm so glad you're here today. Carol Dweck, her fixed mindset versus growth mindset has been so foundational in coaching in the past 6 or 7 years. And if you go to like the big Agile conference, you're going to hear her stuff repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated. But it's really great stuff. And she has stories of transforming inner city schools for underprivileged and underachievers, and such great stuff. Very inspiring, very beautiful, and useful. She said there's 2 different kinds of growth mindsets, because 2 is easy. At least she didn't use quadrants. One of them is the growth mindset, in which you feel like intelligence is a capability, like a muscle that you can grow. You can become smarter, you can become more agile, you can become, whatever. And then that's the growth mindset. Challenges are good if you have a growth mindset. Oh, here's something where I will learn new things. It will challenge me, it'll be fun. I'll try stuff. Feedback is good for me. Then there is the fixed mindset that believes that you're born with as many brain cells as you're ever going to have, that intelligence is like height, when there's nothing you can do about it. And now challenges are bad because that's a chance to expose you. You don't have enough information. You're not good enough. It is the seat of the entire imposter syndrome, the feeling that somehow you're not good enough. I know this one really well. I spent a lot of time in fixed mindset from the time that my third grade teacher told me, I guess some kids just don't have a math brain, and that would be you. You don't have a math brain. You'll never be any good at this. Did not do a whole lot for my mathematical career. So I lived in the fixed mindset, and when I'm frustrated, I would give up. And I'm still fighting that. I'm trying to someday teach myself to read music, and I keep going back to fixed mindset because it's not easy. You have to do it over time. So, start with curiosity. As the instructor for the feedback course learned, it's a lot less embarrassing in the long term. So, in your list of things, the questions you answered, do you see the need to apply curiosity and learning as something that has shut you down or something that builds you up? What do you hear? Anybody? Up? Okay, we have definite, it's an up. The opportunity to apply. And does shutting down curiosity make you more productive? No. Okay. How many of you lead teams? How many managers and leaders do we have? What would you do? What would you do to make curiosity a more vital part of your daily work? How could you teach that or share that? There's some microphones out there if somebody wants to share something. You don't have to. It's not mandatory. Supervise it? Oh, sympathizing. Incentivizing. Okay, good. Thank you. That's why we have mics. Over here, did you? Oh.
Making the environment fail-safe. It is providing them the environment where they feel that they are safe to make mistakes and they remain curious.
Okay. So she says to build. To make the environment safe. The incentivizing is interesting, because I'd kind of like to hear more about that if we can get a mic over to you. What else do we have? To encourage. Let people work independently if they want to. Okay, asking questions, challenging the status quo. Can your people come to you and give you feedback? Yes. Do they know they can? So interesting. There's the idea of, did I talk about doppelgangers yesterday? Yes. So you know that every single person you're working with has a doppelganger that in their head it looks like you. Only whereas you know that you're a perfectly good, like you're a normal person and you're kind and you're thoughtful and you reach out and you're curious and all these wonderful things. Their doppelganger of you is built from all of the worst interactions they've ever had with you, because that is a protective model. How do you calibrate their doppelgangers? Override. So you might have to give more permission than they know. So we're going to talk about mission and permission, and then step forward. There's some interesting stuff in here, I think, and I like you having your questions already listed out. So this again goes back to, this is a long quote. This goes back to Davenport again. He said the most important part here is commitment matters. He said if we were doing physical work, then you could do that with your body when your heart was not in it. But when you're doing knowledge work, the connection between your brain and your heart is such that makes it very difficult. So it's unlikely you'll get great performance out of a knowledge worker if he or she is not mentally and emotionally committed to the work. However, we find there are a lot of barriers to commitment. Even though we demand people to commit effort, that's not really the point, is it, with knowledge workers? It's not effort, it's creativity and knowledge and memory and taste and judgment, decision making. This leads us to the helium balloon theory of productivity. Are you familiar with the helium balloon theory? Okay, this is where I really need you to be curious more than judgmental, because when I say this, it's going to sound stupid. The first time I said it, it sounded stupid to me. The helium balloon theory of productivity is people's level of achievement goes up naturally. Everyone wants to be more productive. Everyone wants to be more accomplished. Everyone wants to be better at what they do. But this is not what we observe. We observe that it rises to a level and stops. And something holds it down. Wherever I find people who do not want more accomplishment, more responsibility, more capability, more opportunity, I find there is something that is artificially holding their productivity and their curiosity down. And if that were removed, then I see people's curiosity and accomplishment and eagerness rise again until it hits another shelf. And if we can move that shelf, it keeps going up again. Nobody went into business so they could sit on their butts and do mostly nothing all day. Everybody wants to do stuff. But somehow they feel that there's a ceiling holding them down. So the helium balloon theory of productivity has two sides to it. One of them is very, very positive, very cool. You were built to do great things. And you want to do that. That's built inside you deeply. But on the other hand, the system that you live in isn't really letting you do that. And I imagine, don't write it down and don't say it out loud because this is on the edge of oversharing. You know what has held you down to a certain level. When I talked about your productivity and your achievement going sky up until something stops it, you had something in mind. And that thing you had in mind might have had a name. And it might have been a doppelganger. And it might be miscalibrated. So, interesting thing here is people in systems do not actually do what the system says they are doing. This is the Systems Bible by John Gall. You'll want this book. You'll want it in electronic form and in paper if possible. It is available through Kindle or I guess other ebook formats. I have a Kindle reader, so I'm not shilling for Amazon. I have no connection yet. Maybe if I keep shilling. Okay, example. In any software organization where authoritatively it exists to produce software, 90% of all policies in the organization exist to prevent the release of software. Have you ever gone to a grocery store? What do they do at a grocery store? They sell food. How many salesmen have you encountered at the grocery store? Well, apparently sales isn't their primary duty, is it? Software organizations prevent software release. What if all your policies were enablement? The heck would that look like? Are there any continuous deployment shops besides mine? Yes, yours? That's okay, it's not a microphone thing. You're all right. Any other continuous deployment shops? Continuous deployment is when the system is built to release software, not to prevent software release. It's a very different kind of world. It takes a lot of stress out, doesn't it? It really does. So, knowledge workers work with their brains instead of their bodies. That means that the workers own the means of production. There's your communist ideal, right? I have my own brain. You don't have any knobs and levers. You don't rent it to me or lease it to me. But therefore, that means that it's necessary that knowledge workers have say in what they work on and how they do it. How much latitude do you have in what you work on and how you do it? And how much do you give latitude? That's an interesting question. So this is where we're going. Of course, everybody knows Daniel Pink, his Drive book. If you haven't read it yet or listened to the audio book, get the audio book, especially if you have a long commute. It's nice. So, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Although, I will say this, there's an interesting problem with this. Sometimes purpose gets lost. So some people think that their job is to edit these 5 files in this source code repository. Or my job is the database. Or my job is the test plan. Or my job is this. Is that the purpose? I was in a place where they worked for oncology doctors, and the software aids the oncology doctors in predicting things like anemia, which is a leading cause of death in chemotherapy patients. Every conversation was about clinicians, doctors, and patients. Every conversation. When they're pulling out data, it was about clinicians, doctors, and patients. And a lot of their attention was on saving lives. That's purpose. Instead, you get somebody whose job is to do the code inspections or to audit the process. And when purpose is abstracted away, mastery becomes the purpose. We become introverted. And George Clemenceau says, there is no passion like that of a functionary for their function. My whole reason to be here is to do these inspections. Do you have the inspection Nazi at your work? Has anyone ever met the inspection Nazi? We had a pixel Nazi. This is a dreadful job. They would take a screenshot and they would put it on the screen and they would turn on the transparency and then they would bring up the design and they would count the pixels after it's blown up to make sure that every icon is exactly at the XY coordinate that it was in the spec. They did this all day long, every day. The pixel Nazi. The rabid inspector. Well, maybe what we should do is maybe not assign people to work that same way. Maybe what we need to do is recruit people. What if instead of assigning people, we could, I'm not saying you can, but what if you could say, hey, here's the thing we're going to be doing this month. This is really cool. Who wants to do this? And here's why we want to do it and why this matters to the company, to the customer, to us personally. Let's go. What do you think? And what if you could just work with the people who want to? That'd be pretty wild. Would that help you? You have your list of things that turn you on and off. Would that work for you if you could be recruited instead of ordered? Yes? No? I don't see heads moving. It makes me nervous. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, those of you who move. And if the person next to you didn't move, nudge them. Okay, so yeah, door, an invitation. The trouble with invitation in business is this. If I invite you, then I'm not controlling. And you could say no. What if you gave a call to action and nobody came? What would that mean? Might mean the thing doesn't need to be done. I don't know. So anyway, those are back to those 4 values, of course. This idea of invitation is what makes knowledge workers interested. It allows them to bring what they have to the table. Sometimes you need a what's in it for me kind of conversation. What's this for? And sometimes it's really great if you have somebody who can do that. Knowledge workers work this way. And this is actually a quote by George Dunwoody, and I intended to put his picture right behind it, but I didn't put his picture up. He said, it's always okay to ask for what you want. You guys doing Scrum? Anybody? Okay. So in the Scrum guide it says, and I quote, nobody, not even the Scrum Master, can tell the development team how to produce the increment. Which means you can't tell people how to do their work. Not if you're the PO, not if you're the Scrum Master. Nobody, it says, the capital N, can tell them how to do the work. It's like, but Tim, you know that according to the founders of Scrum, the only hyper-productive Scrum teams are the ones that use XP practices. Tim says, yes, I know this. And then you say, but golly, because that's what you say. Golly, Tim, if I can't make them do the XP practices, how are we ever going to get productivity? And then George's voice comes in and says, it's always okay to ask for what you want. Hey guys, I'd like you guys to use the XP practices. Well, golly, they say, because that's what they say. I'm not sure I want to do that. Like, well, what do you need? Would you be interested in trying it? Right? So there's a negotiation because they need to be in control because it's their brains is the means of production. And you're not allowed by your process to demand of them. Is that weird? Did you know that was in there? Go to scrumguides.org, take a look. By golly, it's in there. It's really true. So I'm interested now in you as a service. So think about it for a minute. Who is your direct report and who do you directly report to? Think about your place in the organization for a minute. If you want to scribble this down, this is helpful for me. I've done this a few different times, and I found out I was the wrong service. I had to go and do some refactoring. What is the service you provide upward, and what's the service you provide outward? So take a couple minutes. Think about that, write them down. As a manager, what are the services you provide, you as a service? And of course, is the service you provide the service you want to provide? Remember that first question, what excites you? Why did you want this job? Is this the job you wanted? Then the other interesting thing to do is to take the list of other people and see if they agree with you about the services you provide and the services they provide. It's an interesting alignment activity. Some powerful stuff. That's pretty good. Okay. Anybody have any insights they wanted to share?
So I found that mine aligned, which is good. I'm happy about that.
Danica.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that was good stuff.
And thanks, by the way, for promoting the keynote in advance on Twitter. Anybody else? Anything else you noticed? Anything interesting? Okay, let's do one more similar thing. Let's try you as a conduit, connecting the people below to the people above and the people on the left to the people on the right. Are you a conduit? Sometimes I'm a blockage. I'm trying to be a conduit. Me as a conduit. This is something, by the way, I'm trying to do much better. I realized one day that because I'm someone out teaching and coaching and consulting, and then back home, I have people who are finding me gigs and paying me, and the service they provide to me is really, they're taking care of my time and money in ways that it's hard for me to do. And then for them, I'm out there doing the work, and I realized I wasn't connecting what I learned from my clients to my office back home. And then one of the reasons I'm out here today is I'm taking the things I learned in the office back home to you, because I'm trying to get you connected with the ideas that's going to flow through me anyway. And you don't need me as a blockage, you need me as a conduit. And hopefully my service to you is to tell you a whole bunch of things you didn't know you were interested in, if I did a good job. Okay, so moving along. You as a service, you as a conduit. This is important, but there is also a filter on that, which can be dangerous. So we're going to talk about trust for a few minutes, because this is the coolest part of the talk, and I saved it for the end. So, you ready? Davenport again. It's difficult to know whether knowledge workers are actually thinking at any given moment. So really quick, model what it looks like when you're thinking really hard. Half of you at the table, and the other half model what it looks like when you're daydreaming. Go. Yeah. It's impossible to know. Have you ever walked by somebody who was sitting at their table and they were, or desk or whatever, and they were daydreaming? How do you know? Well, they had to have been, because they were smiling. Okay, well, maybe that's not the right answer. And have you ever seen people who are sitting around talking, and you say, hey, stop talking, go back to work? Have you seen that one? Yeah, it happens. Well, it turns out the interdependency and complexity of knowledge work requires them to collaborate effectively with others. So communication maybe isn't time wasting, and maybe daydreaming is not time wasting. And actually, if they were daydreaming, recent studies say that was probably a good thing. They're going to come up with more answers and better answers that way. So, we have to talk about trust, because if we're going to allow the conversations and the quiet thinking and all of that good stuff, there's going to have to be trust. Now, we have this really weird idea, and Esther Derby taught me this. So Esther doesn't have her name up here because this was a conversation, but is Esther here? Are you around? Esther! Everybody wave at Esther. Esther told me in the conversation that we have a funny Western idea that trust is a binary, that you either trust someone or you don't. And it is a very strange Western idea. It's not so. It's not so. So, okay, maybe you trust a politician or you distrust a politician, but are there some politicians that you distrust even more and others even less? Is there a gradient? Could you line them up in the order that you distrust them in your head? What if it's not politicians? What if it's bosses or employees or movie stars who are trying to teach you about world health, which is not their real bailiwick, or politics, right? How much do you trust Bono? Everybody here is like, yeah, yes, absolutely positive. I trust Bono with everything. How many of you know who Bono is? Okay, all of us old people. That's why. He's not bald. It's okay. You can trust him. Okay, so what I think is maybe instead of being an on-off switch, a Boolean point value, maybe we could think about it as a gradient. That would be nice, but if I stop here, Esther will be disapproving, and she won't feel good about her tutelage to me and her mentoring. Because in fact, it's not just a gradient. Maybe you trust me with giving a keynote. Maybe you trust me with being a consultant, but you don't want me to babysit your kids. Maybe you trust me to babysit your kids, but you wouldn't want me to take care of your house payments. Maybe you'd be fine with me taking your house payments and babysitting your kids, but you won't leave me at home with your wife or husband or whatever. Don't worry, you're safe. So you trust different people with different things. My wife knows what not to trust me with. My wife will not give me a spoken grocery list. That is just a guarantee to failure. She could trust me with her life, but not with a grocery list. It has to be written down. Because I have inabilities and abilities, I also have a spectrum of trust built into me. You shouldn't trust me with the wrong things. Don't trust me with directions. Which way's north? I'd have to get a dog. Or a cow. Okay, so trust now, we see that there's spectrums. You trust different people to different degrees with different things. In fact, trust is not a point value, it is a spectrum of spectra. It is all meta. Trust is a complex idea. That's really cool, which means that on any given topic, I could overtrust, undertrust, or right-size de-trust people, right? That's cool. What happens when you undertrust somebody? That's kind of hard to say. Okay, let's go this way. It's a signal-to-noise kind of problem. We'll get there. Stephen Covey, trust is the glue of life. Leave it to Stephen Covey. It is the essential ingredient in effective communication, the foundational principle that holds all relationships, all human concerns run on trust. If this were a sound signal, for the sound guy, hi, you know what clipping is. If I overtrust, then I go beyond the boundaries of where that trust should be. If it was a sound signal, if it is amplified beyond the bounds of the devices that I'm feeding it into, you get distortion and all kinds of nasty sounds. Actually, sometimes they're really great sounds. But good distortion and bad distortion are different things. You're not getting any bad distortion, right? Because you've got that under control. You're managing my gain. So you know how far to trust my voice dynamics just from this short period of time, and there's a general setting you're using. Am I also compressed? No, you're really nice, thank you. So for non-sound people, we're just controlling how much latitude to give me to be louder and softer without going to distortion. So there's a boundary on the trust, and if it were to go over that, it would go, it would be really horrible. Sound like a cat, the hairball. So too much causes clipping and things fall off and it's not good. Too little though, and what you get is a signal that's not, it doesn't really tell you a lot. I'm not complaining a whole lot about it because you're not hearing bad sounds. You're just not really hearing much sound at all. It's really quiet in here. So how would you know if you're under-trusting me? When you over-trust me, something bad happens. When you under-trust me, you don't hear anything about it. So how do you right-size the trust? Maybe somebody's a snake oil salesman and you shouldn't trust them much at all. But what about the snake oil salesman's driver? I bet they have a really good relationship, right? How about this guy? Svengali. You don't trust him. He manipulates people. He hypnotizes them and has them do his bidding. He's a manipulator. When you see me manipulate you people when I come in to teach a class, then you stop trusting me because I'm a manipulator. Because how do you know I'm not doing it to you, right? No manipulation. What about when I bring somebody up and I publicly humiliate them? Would you trust me after that? What if I throw my colleague under the bus? Would you throw somebody under the bus? No trust. It starts to go away. So do you trust me is an interesting question. Trust gives us function. Lencioni, his book, will tell us that distrust gives dysfunction. So here's what I've got it down to. Trust has a few elements. Benevolence. You have to believe I'm on your side. If we were pirates together, you'd know that I would attack the other people's ships, but I'm going to treat you okay, right? I'll share the loot with you. So I'm benevolent to you, even if I'm not benevolent to others. Number 2 is honesty, that when I tell you something, I believe it's true. The third one is respect, that I respect your skills as a pirate, and that's why you're on my crew, and you respect my skills, that's shared. And then mission, we're all going to sink some Spanish galleys and claim the gold together. That's where trust comes from. Without the trust, people don't work well. So, back to my picture. You have permitted or required, you have forbidden. In the middle is the mission that you invite people to. But the question is, what if I invite them and I don't control them and they do the wrong thing? And this is the fear we live with when we're leading people, right? I thought there was another piece of that. I guess there's not. Okay, oh, it's over here. So, what we'll do is, to lead people, I'm going to have to give you alignment. We're going to have to agree on the mission, and we're going to have accountability. Accountability, that's scary. It's not a scary word, really. Accountability means I'm ready to say, I made this decision because it seemed like a good idea that I had at the time, and I believed it to be a good choice. I did this. So where I have choice, I have accountability. I can account for my choices. That's fine. And you can too. You can say why you do the things you do. That's all accountability means. But if you're going to trust me and let me in your mission, we're going to have that. And I'm going to have to return transparency. But in order to find the correct levels where you've over-trusted or under-trusted, we're going to have to iterate many times. You're going to have to keep giving a little more trust, a little less trust, a little more trust. Okay, find that level. You know what, Tim? I can trust you to teach my classes. I know you're going to show up on time. You'll be bathed. You won't be drunk. You'll give good information. We'll be fine. You may not trust me with your kids or your dog or directions, but that's okay. And this is the trust transaction. You give initial trust, expecting transparency. You will give them autonomy, a mission, accountability. They will give back progress, warning, and accountability. Warning is, I have an agreement with you that we will do a thing. I will either do that thing or I will let you know if I need to negotiate that because I can't do it. There's something wrong. And that transparency will let you set the trust levels. Some people say, well, you disappointed me once, I'll never trust you again. Don't work with people if that's your attitude. You can't do that. You have to trust again with different levels of trust. Oh, that's on me. I overtrusted you. I'll take responsibility for that. I gave you more than I should have given you. Let's back down and find the right level. Let me give it to you again. Okay, now, is that better? Does that work for us? Right? That's tough stuff. But the biggest trick is, with accountability, is we can't punish people for randomness. You guys know who Deming is? Okay, W. Edwards Deming has the red bead experiment. You'll see it right there. And there's a paddle, and your job is to reach into the beads and bring up only white beads. And he shows how the randomness is the system itself is stacked against you being able to succeed. I can't hold you accountable for beating a system that's stacked against you, and I can't punish you for the randomness that's native to that system. So if you pull up 10 red beads along with the white beads, I can't punish you for having 10 or reward you for only having 5. It was random. But in our business, because the work is invisible, we punish randomness. And sometimes we reward randomness. And that destroys trust. So, here's where we are with trust. You need investment of trust when you invite and enlist people. You must iterate to find levels, right? And look for appropriate and fair trust levels through that. And beware expedience, manipulation, pillory, violence, dismissal, even firing. Think about what those things mean if you're working with knowledge workers. How important was trust to you on your list as a knowledge worker? And would you extend that same trust to other people to work with them and give them the same opportunities you want, is all? So, there we are, curiosity, mission, and trust. I think that there are things that are mostly, these things are mindset and their concept, and it's really hard to put absolute boundaries and practices around them other than just trying. So let's see how we're doing on the clock. Where are we right now? 5 minutes? 15 minutes, good. That's where I was hoping we would be. I had this terrible fear that I told my stories too long. Cool. So, take a look, learning what you've done, have learned today. What kinds of practices could we use to put curiosity, trust, and mission into play at work? What could we do? So let's get some mics out here and have you guys tell me. So we got Adam and Mark are moving. How about you guys way in the back? Anything? Any ideas? You guys, Midwesterner. You all. You folks. Yeah, we have one right back here in the back table.
I think I have more of a question that might go for that. So if you trust someone and it doesn't work out, so you lower that level of trust and it still doesn't work out, and then you lower it again and it still doesn't work out, how many times do you lower it?
So I want to tell you 70 times 7, but I don't know if that will go over well.
I guess that's where I'm confused about some of the stuff with I completely agree with knowledge workers and how you incentivize them. But sometimes you try and give that leap or have them empowered to do what they need to do with the trust that they're going to, this is what we hope is the outcome, but we don't get that. So,
So I would say that there's a couple different things to look at here. One is, do they give accountability for what they did, how it turned out? So there's a negotiation that goes on. So, you know what, I really expected that you were going to come in and open at 8, and you didn't come in and open at 8. And this is not the first time this has happened. What's going on with this? You know, so there's a discussion. And it may be that person says, oh, I have to drop off my kids after 7:45, so I'm really at risk, you know? Or it might be, you know what, I just didn't know how to do the stuff. And it's like, well, there should have been communication, right? The transparency should have been here. You should let me know as soon as you realize there's a problem. I'm not going to jump down your throat. What is the problem? And maybe, you know, if this is not something you can do, could you just let me know that this is something you can't do? Somebody else can do that. You can do a different job. What are you good at, right? So the negotiation goes on when we overtrust. Now, it may be that we have a bad actor. That's a different story, right? I have somebody who abuses their colleagues if the colleague is a female. Lowering the bar is not even close to enough. And then they abuse somebody because they have a different skin color, or because they have a funny accent, or because they're not from the same state, or because their hair is styled differently, or because they have different personal love needs, right? No, that's bad acting. I'm not going to keep lowering the bar on bad acting. There are, you know, required and forbidden. I'm talking about inside that space, and bad actors are going to go, and not doing what's the least that's required, which, you know, once you're educated as to what that is, that's something that you're held accountable for. So it may be that there's a negotiation. So I find I overtrusted them with database design. Okay, when you're working on database, you need to work with somebody who's more experienced. And then if it turns out they can't work with that person even, it's like, okay, well, maybe they can't do database work. Is that their entire job? Well, then maybe we need to talk about them finding someplace else to do something else. That's okay. But the fact is you've had that negotiation, you've found the trust level, and you may have found the trust level is completely inappropriate to the work. And that's okay. You can be accountable for that, right? Yes, I had to let you go because you can't do the work that you signed up to do, that I hired you to do, and you wouldn't tell me. You know, you went silent and then failed, and I can't have that. I had to make decisions. And I think they should expect that from you. Does that help? Okay. Not telling you how to manage, I hope. Okay. I suddenly thought, wow, I might have overstepped that one. Okay, anybody else? How would you bring on these ideas? Trust is a hard one. Back up.
So I would think to start with any of these three things, it's a cultural change which we have to start with. I think being a leader, first making sure that we are providing a safe place for the people to ask questions, maybe a stupid question, but it's okay to ask it, and we will guide you in the right direction. And then I think it'll fall through. The moment we provide that environment, they will trust us, and we will be able to kind of like, achieve what we have, and that's what would be my take on that.
Yeah, that initial trust is a hard place to start, but,
Absolutely.
but once you've got that, man, you can start snowballing.
Correct.
Anyone else? How about the mission? Have you tried inviting people to your mission? I see some nodding heads with people I know personally. Oh yeah, that's what we do. We invite them to the mission. And then sometimes they overstep their trust, don't they? And then we have to have another conversation and realign on what the real mission is. Have you ever had somebody who joined the mission and then tried to tell everybody else what to do? It's like, wait a minute. I invited you to participate, not to drive everybody else out. Let's talk about that one more time. Trust. You need to trust them too, right? You tell people you need to trust your coworkers to do their part. Let them participate. Have you ever invited somebody into your project and let them say no? By the way, there's a side of that that's really tough. Once you're in trouble and you're offered head count, what do you say? So most of the time, when we're in trouble, and then somebody above says, well, let me give you some more head count to help you get over your problem. And if you say yes, now you got 2 more people you have to tend to, and you don't have a space for them, and it's going to slow you down. But if you say no, and things don't get better, then you didn't try. And there's an appearance mongering in there, right? So where's the negotiation? Have you ever negotiated away an offer of head count? Successfully? Yes? Cool, how'd you do that? Oh, can you just take a mic back to her, Adam?
So we did a comparison against the financials to show how much it was going to slow us down if we brought the headcount in versus if we just continued where we were going and got permission to slice down the deliveries a little more. So it became the negotiation of, we will give you this, but giving us headcount means it's going to take us even longer to get that first piece. So
that's really cool. So what was your relationship with the people who had offered the head count, that they were willing to have that negotiation?
It was a long-built relationship. So it took time to get there, but to be able to say, and the good thing is we had some on the leadership team that gave some support to say, yeah, this is really going to slow them down if we add people. So. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool to have the kind of trust with people above you that you could refuse imposed help? Wouldn't that be cool? Okay, you are the knowledge workers. I don't feel we have a lot of energy for the questions. So what I'll do is I will give you a gift of time. Oh, wait, we do have another one right back here. Oh, okay, no? You? Yes.
My question was, if anybody has a question, can you please raise your hand higher, because I can't really see well over everybody.
See, it's always okay to ask for what you want, right? There's an angle problem. So yes, Adam. Thank you. Right, make sure you can be seen if you have something to offer. Okay, so here's what I have left. Of course, here's my contact information. The slides will be available. I'll make them available. But also, up along this front row, I have set out a number of the little Modern Agile stickers that there's no text on them. They're just cute little stickers, and they're kind of laptop-sized or wallet-sized or tablet-sized, whatever you want to do with them. They're roughly the size of a monocle. And you may have those. And, of course, talk to me anytime you want to. We can talk about how some of these things can be set in motion. And if you really want to get down and dirty with it, maybe we could talk about coming out and maybe assessing and measuring and making some changes for you. Not to make it an infomercial, but just to let you know it's available and these things can be done. And I thank you much for your time and your attention.